He died on a Tuesday morning. And the last thing he ever said to me was, "Drive safe." Not, "I love you." Not, "I'm proud of you." Not even, "Take care of yourself." Just, "Drive safe." I have replayed that moment more times than I can count. Standing at his front door, keys in my hand, him standing in the hallway in his old gray cardigan. If I had known that was the last time I would ever see him standing, I would have stayed longer. I would have said something. But I didn't know. So I just said, "See you next week, Dad." And I drove away. My father was not a cruel man. I want to say that before anything else, because this is not a story about a bad father. He was the kind of man who got up before sunrise every single day of his working life, 6 days a week, sometimes 7. He never complained about it, not once that I can remember. He just got up, made his tea, and went. He paid every bill on time. We never went without food. We never came home to an empty house. Every school trip was paid for. Every pair of shoes was replaced before they wore through. By every measure that the world gives you for what a good father looks like, he was one. But there was something else about my father. A wall. A quiet, invisible wall that none of us, not me, not my sister, not even my mother, could ever fully get through. He didn't hug easily. On birthdays, he would pat you on the shoulder. At Christmas, he would
sit in his chair and watch us open gifts with a small smile that never quite reached his eyes. Or maybe it did, and we just didn't know how to read it. If you cried in front of him, he would look away. Not with disgust, not with anger, with something more like discomfort. Like he was watching something private that he wasn't supposed to see. Emotion was a language he had simply never been taught. And I understood that, even as a child. I understood it in the way children understand things they can't yet put into words. But understanding something and being okay with it are two very different things. Because there was one thing I needed from my father. One thing that no paid bill, no roof, no school trip could give me. I needed him to tell me he was proud of me. And he never did. I was the first person in my entire family to go to university. That is not a small thing where I come from. In our neighborhood, in our family, in the world my father had grown up in, university was something that happened to other people. People from different postcodes, different circumstances. But I had worked for it, stayed up late for it, chosen books over everything else for it. And the day I got my acceptance letter, I was shaking. I ran downstairs 2 steps at a time. My mother screamed when she read it. She grabbed my face with both hands and kissed my father on the forehead 3 times. My father was sitting at the kitchen table with his newspaper. I handed it to him. He put the newspaper down. He took the letter. He read it slowly, the way he read everything, carefully, like the words might rearrange themselves if he rushed. Then he folded it, handed it back, and said, "Make sure you study hard." That was it. I stood there for a moment, waiting, hoping there was something else coming. There wasn't. I went back upstairs and sat on the edge of my bed. And I made a decision that day, without even realizing I was making it. I decided I would make it impossible for him to stay silent. I would achieve something so undeniable, so visible, so enormous, that the words would just
come.
They would have to come. So I graduated with honors. He said, "Good. Now find a job that pays well." I got the job, then I got promoted. He said, "Don't let it go to your head." I bought my first house at 31. A real house with a garden in a good area. I took my parents to see it on a Sunday afternoon. My mother walked through every room, touching the walls gently, like she couldn't believe it was real. My father stood in the garden and looked at the fence. He said, "You'll need to treat that wood before winter." I laughed at the time. I laughed because the alternative was to cry in front of him. And I already knew how that would go. So I kept going, kept building, kept adding things to an invisible list that I was compiling entirely for one person's benefit. Every achievement had the same silent question underneath it. Is this enough? Are you proud now? I never asked him out loud. I was too afraid of the silence that might answer me. The call came on a Tuesday morning. I was getting ready for work. My phone was on the bathroom shelf. I saw my mother's name on the screen and I answered it without thinking. Her voice was very calm. My mother has always been calm in a crisis. It is one of the things about her that I have only understood as an adult. She said, "Your father had a heart attack in the night." He's gone. 4 words. He's gone. I remember sitting on the edge of the bath. I remember the sound of a car outside. I remember thinking I needed to turn off the tap. I drove to my parents' house. My mother was sitting in the kitchen. The kettle had just boiled. She had made 2 cups of tea. Out of habit, I think. One for her, one for a man who was no longer there. I sat across from her, and we didn't say very much for a long time. I kept looking at his chair, at the slight dent in the cushion where he always sat, at the newspaper folded on the side table, the one he had been reading the night before, never knowing he wouldn't finish it. And sitting there, in that kitchen, I realized something strange. I wasn't thinking about the 30 years. I wasn't thinking about the university letter, or the house, or every milestone he had acknowledged with a practical comment instead of the words I needed. I was thinking about one afternoon. I was 9 years old. I had won a small prize at school. Nothing big. A drawing competition. They gave me a certificate with my name printed on it in blue ink. I brought it home and showed it to my father. He looked at it for a moment. And for just 1 second, one small fleeting second, I saw something move across his face. Something that looked exactly like pride. His eyes changed. Just slightly. Just for a moment. But before I could be certain, before I could hold on to it, it was gone. He cleared his throat, asked if I had done my homework. And I had spent the next 30 years of my life trying to earn that look again. 1 second on the face of a man who didn't know how to speak. That was what I had been chasing. 2 weeks after the funeral, I went back to help my mother sort through his belongings. It is a strange thing, going through the possessions of someone who is gone. Everything feels too ordinary for what it is. Old shoes, reading glasses, a watch that needs a new battery. I was going through the drawer of his bedside table when I found it. A small notebook. Dark blue cover. The kind you can buy for almost nothing anywhere. The corners were worn. The spine was creased from being opened many times.
I almost put it aside. But something made me open it. Inside, in my father's handwriting, neat and careful and small, the way he wrote everything, were dates, going back years. Next to each date, a sentence.
Sometimes two. David passed his driving test today. First try. Didn't need me to teach him. He figured it out himself. David gave a speech at his company dinner. His mother heard from someone who was there. Said the whole room was listening. David bought his house today. Stood in the garden and I thought, I don't know how he turned out this way, but he did. David's daughter was born this morning. He called me from the hospital. His voice was different. He's going to be a good father. Better than me, I think. I sat down on the floor of his bedroom. I read every single entry. There were dozens of them, going back to when I was a child. David won a drawing prize at school, brought it home to show me. I should have said something. I didn't know what to say. He had written it all down. Every moment he had felt proud of me, every single one. He had taken this small blue notebook out of his bedside drawer and written it down. Quietly, privately, alone. He just never said it out loud. I have thought about that notebook almost every day since. And it took me a long time to work through what I felt about it. Because at first, I was angry. It was all there. All of it. The pride, the love, the acknowledgement I had spent my whole life searching for. It was 12 inches from where he slept every night, and he never once opened his mouth. But the anger faded, and what replaced it was something more complicated and more painful. Grief. Not just for the man I lost, but for the conversation we never had. For the version of our relationship that existed entirely inside a small blue notebook and never made it into the air between us. My father was not a cold man. He was a man who felt everything and had no idea how to release it. He had grown up in a world that told men, especially men like him, that feelings were weakness. That saying, "I'm proud of you" out loud was unnecessary, even self-indulgent. He had been shaped by silence. And so he passed it on. Not out of cruelty, but because it was the only language he had ever been given. I keep that notebook on my desk now. Not as a wound, but as a reminder. Because I have children of my own, and I absolutely refuse to let them spend one day of their lives wondering. I tell them when I am proud of them. I tell them when something they do moves me. I tell them I love them in the middle of ordinary Tuesdays for no reason at all. Not because it comes naturally. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes I hear my father's voice in my own throat and I feel the old pull towards silence. But I choose differently because I know what the silence costs. I know what it feels like to find the words too late. If there is someone in your life right now who is waiting to hear something from you, don't write it in a notebook. Say it. Today. Not at the next achievement, not at the next milestone, not when they have somehow earned it enough. Today. Because the people we love most are not waiting for the right moment. They are just waiting. If this story reached something in you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And if you are new here, subscribe to The Untold Cost. New stories every week. Stories about the things life takes from us that nobody warns you about. I will see you in the next one.